Some mornings begin before the clock is ready to admit it. The room is still dark enough to hide the corners. The air has that soft stillness that only exists a few minutes before dawn. And somewhere beside the bed, the alarm hasn't rung yet. But Michael is already awake. Not suddenly. Not with fear. Just awake. His eyes stay closed at first. One hand rests against the blanket while the other lightly touches the edge of the mattress, almost as if he is checking whether the room is still where he left it the night before. He doesn't move right away. There was a time when mornings happened quickly, feet on the floor, body upright before the mind fully arrived. The day used to pull him forward without asking permission. Now it feels different. Some mornings don't begin with movement. They begin with negotiation. Not pain, not weakness, just a quiet conversation happening somewhere beneath the surface. Your body no longer rushes to meet the day. Before you stand up, something inside you quietly checks the cost of doing it. Michael opens his eyes slowly and stares at the pale shape of the ceiling fan above him. He waits a few seconds before turning his head. Not because he has to, because his mornings now begin with calibration, and maybe that's what surprises people after 60. The body does not suddenly stop understanding the world. It simply becomes more careful with how it reconnects to it. The eyes adjust to light. The ears search for orientation. The balance system listens for gravity. The nervous system checks whether the floor still feels steady beneath memory. These things happen quietly now. And if you've ever noticed yourself pausing in bed for a few extra seconds before beginning the day, if your mornings sometimes feel less like launching and more like reconnecting, you are not alone. If you are someone who cares about your health and the quiet ways the body speaks over time, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel if it helps you feel understood. Because sometimes, the smallest morning habits reveal the deepest conversations happening inside us. James noticed it beside the bathroom sink, not in the mirror, not in his face, but in the way his hand rested against the countertop before he reached for his toothbrush. The light above the mirror buzzed softly. The tile floor was colder than usual. He stood there for a moment longer than he used to, letting his eyes settle into focus. It wasn't dizziness exactly, more like his body wanted confirmation before movement, as though balance had become something negotiated instead of assumed. He rinsed his face slowly. Water touched his skin, and he stayed bent over the sink for one extra breath before standing upright again. Years ago, he never would have noticed that pause. Now he notices all of them. The hand against the counter, the slower turn of the neck, the tiny moment before stepping backward. Not because he is afraid, because his body has become more precise about transitions. And sometimes, when mornings begin with those careful little adjustments, the body may quietly be asking for attention, especially when hydration, circulation, blood pressure, or inner ear balance are no longer syncing as effortlessly overnight. But James does not think about medical words while brushing his teeth. He simply thinks, "I move differently in the mornings now." And strangely, that thought no longer feels alarming. It feels honest. Patricia wakes before sunrise almost every day. Not intentionally. Her body simply arrives there on its own. She lies still listening to the hum of the refrigerator somewhere down the hall. The house sounds different before daylight, softer, farther away. She reaches toward the nightstand for her glasses but stops halfway. Her fingers hover for a second in the air, not confusion, not forgetfulness, just orientation, as if her mind wants a moment to reconnect names to objects, shapes to meaning, morning to memory. After 60, the brain sometimes wakes in layers. One part becomes alert immediately. Another arrives more slowly, like sunlight moving across a room. Patricia has begun noticing that if she sits up too quickly, the morning feels scattered for a few minutes afterward. So now she waits. She places both feet carefully inside her old slippers before standing. She looks toward the doorway. She breathes once. Only then does she begin moving. At first she worried these rituals meant something was wrong. Now she wonders if her body was simply asking for cooperation. Maybe mornings were never supposed to begin abruptly. Maybe the nervous system always needed gentleness, and younger years just made us too fast to notice. William notices it on the stairs. Every morning around 6:30 he walks downstairs to start the coffee maker before the rest of the house wakes up. He used to descend the staircase carrying laundry baskets, grocery bags, sometimes even talking over his shoulder while moving. Now he touches the railing first. Always. Not dramatically. Not carefully enough for anyone else to notice. But enough for him to notice. His balance no longer reacts instantly after waking. It listens first. The body seems to ask, where is the floor? Where is the center? How quickly are we turning today? So William pauses at the top stair for half a second before descending. And in that tiny moment lives something most people never talk about. Morning coordination is not only about muscles, it is also about communication. Feet sending messages upward, eyes measuring distance, the brain checking stability, blood flow adjusting after hours of stillness. A younger body often performs these conversations silently and instantly. An older body performs them more honestly. William pours coffee into his favorite chipped mug and stands quietly by the kitchen window. Outside, the sky is beginning to soften into blue. He wraps both hands around the warmth and smiles slightly. Maybe the body wasn't slowing him down. Maybe it simply wanted to be included in the morning. Linda notices the light first. Not because it is beautiful. Because it suddenly feels brighter than it used to. The bathroom light in particular. Some mornings she flips the switch and squints for several seconds while her eyes adapt. The brightness feels sharp at first, almost startling against the darkness her body just left behind. She has started leaving the hallway light on before bed now. A softer transition. And though she rarely says it aloud, she has also begun moving more carefully during those first few minutes after waking, especially when turning corners or stepping onto different surfaces. The body processes contrast differently over time. Light, depth, edges, motion. And mornings are when those adjustments become most noticeable. Linda once thought she was becoming overly cautious. Now she realizes caution is not always fear. Sometimes it is intelligence. Sometimes it is the nervous system protecting stability before the world fully comes into focus. She stands by the coffee machine waiting for the slow, dripping sound to finish. One hand rests against the counter. Not for support exactly, for grounding. A quiet reminder that she is fully here. And perhaps that is what many morning pauses really are. Not signs of failure, signs of reconnection. There are mornings when Robert wakes feeling perfectly rested, until he tries to turn his head. Not pain, not stiffness in the dramatic sense, just resistance. As though the neck and shoulders spent the night becoming protective without informing him. He sits at the edge of the bed and rolls his shoulders slowly before standing. One rotation, then another. His body seems unwilling to rush directly from stillness into movement anymore. And maybe that makes sense. After years of carrying tension quietly through work, stress, driving, lifting, worrying, sleeping unevenly, the body begins asking for transitions instead of commands. Robert notices this most while putting on his shirt in the morning. There is always a brief pause before raising one arm through the sleeve. A small hesitation, a private calculation. Can we do this smoothly today? And the strange thing is, he no longer feels angry about it. Because beneath the slowness, there is awareness. The body is communicating instead of remaining silent. Sometimes those subtle morning limitations can reflect inflammation, nerve sensitivity, muscle fatigue, or circulation changes that become more noticeable after rest. But Robert does not need complicated explanations to understand the feeling. He simply knows mornings require listening now. And listening, he has discovered, is not weakness. Mary talks to herself in the kitchen sometimes. Only little things. Easy now. Not too fast. Where did I leave that spoon? The words are gentle, almost affectionate. One morning she noticed herself standing completely still beside the refrigerator with the door open. Not because she forgot what she wanted, because her body had not fully caught up to her intention yet. Her hand rested against the refrigerator handle while her eyes adjusted and her thoughts organized themselves into sequence. Coffee first, toast second, medication after breakfast. It took perhaps 4 seconds, but 4 quiet seconds can feel very loud when nobody talks about them. Mary used to judge herself for these pauses. Now she thinks differently. The body is not a machine starting instantly at the push of a button. It is more like a house, slowly waking room by room. Some mornings, the lights come on gradually, and perhaps that gradualness matters more than speed, especially when blood sugar, hydration, sleep quality, or medication timing begin influencing the nervous system in subtle overnight ways. Mary closes the refrigerator gently and smiles to herself. There is something strangely peaceful about moving slower when nobody is rushing you anymore. Daniel notices his breathing before anything else. Not shortness of breath, not panic, just awareness. When he wakes now, he often stays lying down for a moment, taking one deeper breath before sitting up, as though his chest wants reassurance before movement begins. The room is cool, the blanket heavy around his legs. Outside, a delivery truck groans somewhere down the street. He inhales slowly. There was a time he never noticed breathing unless something hurt. Now he notices rhythm. The body after 60 becomes sensitive to interruption. Poor sleep, stress, late dinners, dehydration, even emotional fatigue. And mornings are often where those imbalances introduce themselves first. Daniel has started opening the bedroom curtains more slowly too. Too much brightness all at once feels harsh now. Everything seems easier when transitions happen gently. He thinks about that often, how younger years celebrated speed, but later years reward steadiness. Maybe that is not loss. Maybe it is refinement. Jennifer keeps one hand on the bathroom doorframe every morning. Nobody knows she does this. It is such a small gesture most people would never notice. But she notices. Especially on mornings when she turns too quickly and the room feels half a second behind her movement. Not spinning, not severe, just disconnected for a moment. So she developed a ritual. Pause. Touch the frame. Wait for the floor to feel certain again. Then continue. At first, she worried she was becoming fragile. Now she understands something different. Her balance system has simply become conversational instead of automatic. It asks questions before reacting. Where are we turning? How fast? Is the footing stable? Are the eyes fully focused yet? The body becomes more collaborative over time. And maybe those small morning hesitations deserve attention not because they are dramatic, but because they are new. Quiet changes matter. Not every whisper needs fear, but every whisper deserves listening. Jennifer brushes her hair slowly while pale morning light moves across the bathroom mirror. For a moment she simply stands there breathing, present, careful, alive. And there is dignity in that. I remember a morning a few years ago when I woke before sunrise and stayed sitting at the edge of the bed longer than usual. The room was silent except for the ticking clock on the dresser. I could have stood immediately. Nothing stopped me. But something inside me wanted stillness first. I remember placing both feet on the floor and noticing the temperature of the wood, the heaviness in my eyes, the strange need to orient myself before walking into the hallway. And for the first time, I did not interpret that pause as weakness. I interpreted it as communication. The body saying, "Stay with me for a moment before we begin." That may be one of the quietest truths nobody prepares us for. After 60, mornings stop being automatic. They become relational. The body wants partnership. It wants awareness, pacing, patience, hydration, light, breath, stillness. Not because it is failing, because it is working harder to keep everything beautifully coordinated. And maybe that deserves respect instead of frustration. Thomas notices it when tying his shoes. He sits in the same chair near the front door every morning before his walk. The shoelaces take slightly longer now. Not because his hands cannot do it, because his body prefers balance before bending. So he rests one elbow against his knee first, then leans forward carefully. Outside, birds move across the pale morning sky. The neighborhood is quiet except for sprinklers clicking softly against the grass. Thomas finishes tying the second shoe and stays seated another few seconds, listening, not to pain, to readiness. That may be the hidden change many people feel but rarely describe. The body after 60 does not necessarily want less life. It simply wants a clearer conversation with movement. And when those conversations begin changing suddenly, more fatigue, unusual dizziness, lingering disorientation, shaking, weakness, breathlessness, or instability, they deserve kindness and attention instead of dismissal. Not panic, attention. Because the body often whispers long before it shouts. And mornings are where those whispers become easiest to hear. The quietest mornings often teach us the most, not because something is wrong, but because the body has finally learned how to whisper instead of shout. So tomorrow morning, before rushing toward the coffee maker, before turning on the television, before answering the world again, take one extra second. Notice the way your feet meet the floor. Notice the way your breathing settles. Notice the small rituals your body has created without asking permission. The pause before standing, the hand against the counter, the moment your eyes wait for focus, the breath before the staircase. These are not interruptions to life. They are part of your conversation with it. And perhaps the goal was never to move exactly as you once did. Perhaps the goal is to move with awareness instead of urgency, to wake with cooperation instead of resistance, to understand that carefulness is not weakness, it is wisdom practiced quietly. If any part of this video felt familiar, share your own morning moment in the comments. Maybe it is the way you sit at the edge of the bed before standing. Maybe it is how you wait for your balance to settle. Maybe it is the comfort of touching the same kitchen counter every morning before the day begins. Someone else reading your words may finally feel understood. And if this video brought you comfort, don't forget to like the video, share your experience in the comments, and subscribe to Senior Wisdom for more gentle conversations like this. Thank you for spending these quiet moments with me. May your mornings feel gentle, and may you never become too busy to notice what your body is trying to tell you.